Hi, I'm Nat.
And I'm Guy, and this is your home for everything Alberta independence. Thank you to everybody that stuck with us yesterday. We had a ton of technical difficulties. Hopefully today's going to go a lot smoother.
Yes, but let's start with Anya Zinsky. Thank you so much for the $10 super chat as we're coming in, saying watching from Edmonton, Alberta. Hi, Nat and Guy. Happy Wednesday, independence all the way. And hello to you all the way over in Edmonton, Alberta. And thank you so much for the support as well. But everybody else, thank you so much for joining us today as well. Please don't forget to subscribe. Again, it really does help us out. It's what helps us out the most. And we try to read most, if not all, of your comments live, but we do pause the whole show, as you just saw now, for any super chats that come in, and those also really help us out as well. And we have memberships.
Yeah, and Nat added a special thank you at the beginning to everybody that became a member. So Thank you to all the members as well. Let's get into some comments, and then we'll go into Alberta. Oh, actually, we got a lot of breaking news today.
Yes, we do. Glenn Gunn says, good evening all, another gorgeous day in Calgary. Lovely, and I'm glad that the nice weather is keeping up over there, and says nice intro. And again, you can check for all your names in there. I will be updating it, I guess, each month. Hopefully.
Well, I'll say it's not a complete nice day in Calgary. There was one dark cloud in Calgary today, and I think that was Mark Carney.
David W. Carlson, hello, says howdy from Parkland County, and hello all the way over there. And Cam Penjali, hello, says watch Derek Fildebrand's video about Daniel Smith press conference with Mark Carney.
Yeah, I grabbed it. I thought that was the best take on the press conference as well, but everybody came out almost immediately. Danielle Smith has her eyes on Ottawa. She is becoming an Ottawa politician. She is no longer an Alberta politician, at least in my opinion.
We've been saying this over and over again.
Yeah, I mean, you have politicians in other provinces that are more Albertan than Danielle Smith, specifically Dallas Brody there.
But speaking of, let's actually get into breaking news.
Extra, extra, read all about it. Extra, extra, read all about it.
And let's start with this, however, from Mark Nixon saying, catastrophic expert David Rosenberg says the Canadian dollar is about to implode. 160 or 62 cents incoming Canadians are about to get crushed.
Yeah, and we've been talking a lot about this. I'm glad other people are really starting to notice this. The markets are betting against the Canadian dollar as well. A lot of big money kind of rolling in there, shorting the Canadian dollar. How long do I give it? I don't know. I would think sometime after the midterms, the collapse would come. That's the American midterms. I think the Canadian dollar is going to be highly dependent on what happens in the American midterms.
But let's watch.
Well, there's a variety of reasons, and the premise is really just based on pure math, because the lack of productivity growth in this country, in absolute terms, in fact, it's running negative. We're fundamentally bearish on the Canadian dollar, but we talked about not just moving to 150, but barring something significant internally in the economy. If these trends continue, if this gap continues in terms of relative unit labor costs, we're not just talking about stopping at 150. We'll probably have to go to 160 or 62.5 cents, which is...
Yeah, and that would turn the Canadian dollar into the Canadian peso at that point. Another thing I'll say is Mark Carney is just touting the economic relevance of Canada, and I completely disagree. And he's no longer using Bank of Canada statistics. He's using other statistics because I don't think he any longer agrees with the Bank of Canada.
There's only so much blame that they can continue to try to push onto the US and Trump and the tariffs until it's already coming back right into their faces.
Well, I don't know. They're going to keep trying, and I think Jason Kenney's going to try as well. We got a big story on Jason Kenney in just a little bit.
But Glenn, speaking of Derek Fildebrand, Western Standard says, watch Derek give his unfiltered opinions and comment on Daniel Smith's answer to a reporter on the topic of equalization. Where is the real Daniel Smith? And I think she left us a while ago when her pursuit for Ottawa became greater than her desire to actually help Alberta.
Yeah, and we're going to have a few clips from their press conference today. It seems like Mark Carney and Danielle Smith are just absolute best buddies, and I'm sure that's the way he wants to make it appear, especially leading up to October 19th.
This is Alberta Premier Danielle Smith's reaction to a question about equalization at a press conference with Mark Carney earlier today.
The pitch to the Prime Minister is let's just get rid of that escalator, let's equalize to the point of need, and then let's take the excess that's in that fund and distribute it back to the provinces on an equal per capita basis. That'll help us with our funding pressures, and I think it will be a demonstration.
What have you done with Danielle Smith? This isn't the Alberta Premier that I remember. This isn't the Alberta Premier that I remember people elected to put into power a few years ago on a promise of something like the Sovereignty Act. The position of the people and the government of Alberta is not that we should lobby to make a few minor tweaks to equalization to, stop a few $100 million of going to Ontario. The people of Alberta voted in a referendum just a few years ago not to tweak equalization, but to abolish it completely, to remove it from the Constitution, to end it, period. That's the position of the people of Alberta. I don't know what you've done with Danielle Smith, but I want the real one back.
Absolutely. And there's a ton of things she's not doing. She won't pick battles unless she thinks she's going to absolutely win them, and she'll only go so far as she'll think she'll get some kind of small victory. She's compromising a lot of the first principles of the people of Alberta that put her in there for completely different reasons. They want sovereignty. They do not want compromise at this point. And that's why we're having the issue of independence as well.
And again, I think the real Danielle Smith got left behind a long time ago when the career politician Danielle Smith and the wanting more power and wanting more influence Danielle Smith came into play by noticing that there is a opportunity over there in Ottawa, and especially if she's able to either oust Pierre Poilievre or whoever comes right after Pierre Poilievre, be it Jason Kenney or a Doug Ford, as we've also been saying that it seems like there is moves within the Conservative Party to essentially oust Pierre Poilievre, then put in one of these puppets that will end up like O'Toole, the Tool, and end up leaving shortly after and bringing in a Danielle Smith that is well liked and loved by a lot of other Conservatives around the rest of Canada. However, in Alberta, I think her true colors have been shining.
Well, Danielle Smith is absolutely shining on the national stage right now. It's because Mark Carney wants to be buddy-buddy, and they want to make it look like she's the best possible candidate. I completely agree. I think a Jason Kenney and a Doug Ford are attempting to oust Poilievre. Neither of them are going to be acceptable to the general public for the mid or long term. Danielle Smith, I think, has her eyes on Ottawa, and the easiest way to get in is if a Doug Ford or a Jason Kenney manages to take Poilievre's seat, is she's going to take their seat. We need somebody in government in Alberta, specifically as the premier, that's going to start taking back sovereignty for Alberta and Albertans, whether that's bringing back the CPP money to Albertan banks, which just takes a phone call, or any number of other things. Even if they're going to lose the issue against the federal government, force the federal government to take the opposing stance that they do not want Alberta to have sovereignty on a slew of issues.
And let's also not forget that the Conservative Party seems to be going more towards the elbows up, to be essentially solidifying further, I would say, not just recently, the uniparty that we continue to see, and the fact that, yes, even Poilievre's strategy was to kind of side with Carney as well as Doug Ford as well as Jason Kenney.
And I think we got to keep going. We got a ton of stories today. In the breaking news alone, I think I got 4 or 5 stories.
Yes, on that press conference, starting with Juno News says, quote, "Work anywhere if you're digitally verified." Prime Minister Carney is touting greater labor mobility after revealing last week that provinces will roll out digital verification for interprovincial tradespeople by next spring.
Yeah, and again, this is not a good idea. They want interprovincial mobility. This would be great if we didn't have the issue of mass immigration. And we're going to go in depth into that. Carney seems to be touting that he's self-mass immigration. I have the numbers that say otherwise. But when you do something like this, what he wants to do is he wants to bring in immigrants into the country and be able to place them across the country wherever he wants. And I'm sure he's looking at Alberta in case this binding referendum doesn't go his way. He's going to want to put a lot of refugees, a lot of people with PR status within Alberta, and probably fast track them before a binding referendum.
Commitments to have more direct-to-consumer alcohol sales across the country. Alberta already does lead the way on that. And commitments to enable greater labor mobility so Canadians can work where they want. Commitments to have more direct-to-consumer.
And they always make it sound very great. And again, we're opening up interprovincial trade, something that could have been done a while ago. But thanks to Trump now and the alcohol thing, they're having to do it anyways and forcefully. But we're also talking a lot about the fact that they might want to start nationalizing a lot of these natural resource industries, and by doing so, having further control, and with digital ID and interprovincial working conditions and relations, also having further control on that.
Yeah, we need to call it out for what it is. This isn't great interprovincial trade. I know maybe you're not as informed on this particular issue, but
no, it was sarcasm.
What I'm going to say here is they're putting the federal government at the hub of the wheel. So yes, the provinces can trade together, but there's all kinds of more regulations and other things that come up that put all the power in the federal government's hands. You are losing economic sovereignty with this interprovincial trade. Everything they want to frame is to put power in the hands of the government, take away sovereignty from the provinces, and therefore taking sovereignty away from the citizens themselves.
Mm-hmm. And lastly, as you were mentioning, CTV News says Prime Minister Mark Carney says government has taken back control of immigration. This has been uttered over and over again, both by Trudeau and himself, especially when the numbers are actually going up. So let's actually look quickly at the article. Again, from CTV News.
And I actually looked into this because I was shocked he was saying this. And I was like, well, this has to be true. And then I had to read between the lines and relook at my numbers because he has not fixed immigration. And I'll go into it in a minute. Let's read the whole thing because it's not that long. And I think it is crucially important, especially with the non-binding referendum coming up.
Yes, Prime Minister Mark Carney says his government has taken back control, quote unquote, of immigration. The Prime Minister made the remarks at a press conference in Red Deer, Alberta, after being asked about the upcoming referendum that will ask Albertans how they want their province to deal with immigration. Carney told reporters that immigration was, quote, far too high when his government took over, even though Trudeau had just said and announced that they were bringing it down, arguing that Canada had lost control of levels in foreign students and temporary workers.
And let me just say this, it's just as high. He's juggling the numbers between 4 different demographics, and he's saying, oh, I got 3 of the demographics down, and he doesn't mention the 4th one. And the 4th one is just absolutely skyrocketing. And the 4th one is the one demographic you really don't want in the country because it's going to bring down culture, GDP, and everything else.
The Prime Minister says the flow of asylum seekers entering Canada is down 1/3, while the level of temporary foreign workers is down by half and foreign students down by 2/3. Carney says overall immigration levels are still putting pressure on housing, adding that there's a good argument to suggest that there's a need for, quote unquote, a few more years of restraint. He says Canada is on top of the numbers and that that's a lot of quotation marks for this article, and that there is now an opportunity for the federal government and premiers to discuss next steps.
And this was confusing to me too, because I have constantly been showing the numbers of the amount of refugees, well over 2 million refugees a year, which is a spectacular amount of refugees. And it was saying asylum seekers. I thought asylum seekers and refugees were the same. No, they're not. I had to research it. They're in 2 different brackets, 2 different categories. And that's where he's hiding this. He's bringing down, yes, students, PRs, and asylum seekers, but he's only bringing it down this much. Well, refugees are through the freaking roof, and refugees are the worst kind of person you want into the country because they're not culturally assimilating, and there's a lot of negatives they're going to bring with them.
Mm-hmm. And it's also funny that they did change the name of the institution that does control those flows and grant citizenships and refugee status to Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada. It didn't used to be called that. It used to just be called Citizenship Canada. So there you go.
And again, we need to put a complete halt on mass immigration, force the ball into the government's court so they actually have to deal with the problem, and that is birth rates increasing, families and things like this. If the government can lean on immigration, they're never going to fix the core issues. And this is what I want to see in Alberta. I'm not necessarily against the idea of immigration, although I am very, very hard on it, but I don't want to see any immigration in the beginning. I actually want to fix the core issues every single Western country seems to be avoiding at this point. After we fix the core issues and we no longer need immigration, that's when we can say, okay, what kind of immigration do we want? And we can make critical decisions about why we want them, who we want, and when do we want them.
Well, and also, again, as you were saying, being able to give that opportunity to young, actual, real Canadians to have the families, to have the work jobs, to have the opportunities, to not have the burden of the taxes, of the housing, and of everything else that is actually the reason why people are not reproducing themselves within the country. But nobody wants to look at that. That's too difficult to deal with, and that would actually probably decrease GDP, at least in the short term. They just want to increase and have these big GDP numbers while not taking care of either the infrastructure or the people or the culture that are currently within the country just by importing more and more people.
Well, this is what happens when you have an economist running your freaking economy. It's GDP at all costs. The more immigrants he brings in, the more the GDP goes up, but the more GDP per person goes down. That means the quality of life of your citizens is going down. What I want the country to maximize is quality of life for the citizens, period.
But now let's go back into your comments. Glengun says Red Deer. Yes, Mark Carney was in Red Deer. Glengun also says Carney did it with Brookfield. And also says RCMP's contract is up in 2032 and they will not be staying here and will not be staying here. Here is our own police force. Sorry, where is our own police force? Okay.
Yeah, hopefully we get that the Alberta sheriffs. That's the hope at this point.
On that note, let's actually get into Alberta Stay Free, because there's a lot of news and information in there too.
Sweet home Alberta, where the roots run deep and the money trees grow.
And let's start with this from John Alberta Patriot, who again is great for being able to go out on the street and actually have the conversations that we continue to encourage everybody and all the engaged citizenry to have. But John Alberta Patriot says, quote, the argument I keep hearing for staying in Canada boils down to patriotism, quote unquote. Canada is a big, beautiful country. We have the maple leaf. We've always been Canadian. Therefore, we should stay. And so we should.
And yeah, let's go down to the thing and we'll just see it here for a moment. Yeah, they want you to stay in Canada. They want you to keep paying taxes. And we showed that clip yesterday. After you include GST and all the other things you're going to pay outside of your basic income tax and things like that, you're about 70 cents of every dollar is absolutely gone. In a free and independent Alberta, there is no reason there should be taxes on citizens. And that might seem like a radical idea to some, but some people might not know how a lot of other countries work that have a tremendous amount of natural resources. They typically do not have taxes on their citizens. Alberta is very well set up to not only not tax its citizens, but not tax its small businesses either. It would only tax medium and larger businesses as well as natural resources. And this should be able to provide more than enough of the infrastructure that we need.
And again, Nenshi, Kenny, and Lukaszek there and everybody else who follows them and listens to their talking points and takes them wholeheartedly have a very simple plan, which is stay in Canada, keep paying taxes, and believe the patriotism. They agree the problems exist, they just don't have a plan to fix them, and there is no who, what, where, when, why as to how to fix the actual problems. And it's getting very similar with Pierre Poilievre and the rest of the Conservatives that do want to shackle Alberta still to Canada by just saying, well, you have to stay. Patriotism, the flag. Oh, how dare Alberta even think that they can be independent without our help, the help of Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives. Yeah,
it's pretty amazing. These people are really trying to raise their profile off the back of Alberta independence, going against it, standing against it. They think that is what's going to help their future and the future of Canada. I got something else for them. They're never going to win the votes of Albertans. And we got a story coming up a little bit later, which I think that kind of goes into.
Let's also not forget that this fake, because I will call it fake patriotism, that both Mark Carney and the Elbows Up crowd, but again now also the Conservatives, the Federalists, want to impose upon Alberta is National Socialism, is them taking over the flag that was used during the Freedom Convoy and saying, no, this flag actually represents the multiculturalism and the increasingly higher taxes and the relying on the government for everything, which wasn't the intent and purpose, although it was the intent and purpose of Pierre Elliott Trudeau.
Yeah, well, there's grocery stores within Alberta now trying to ban the Alberta flag, saying that it's a sign for independence and it's against Canadian patriotism, which is absolutely ridiculous.
But actually on that, there are actual Albertan patriots still doing something and having that show of force. Let's Talk Alberta says, quote, we have large highway banners ready for placement. Do you have the perfect spot for one? Contact them at letstalkalberta@gmail.com or use their contact form on their website, which is letstalkalberta.com. If you support the work that they're doing, you can send an e-transfer via same links.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is extremely important because they have the banners ready to go. They just need the spaces. So we need supporters that are willing to lend space and support Alberta independence. Let's go into it. He's going to explain it a little bit better, I think.
Hey everybody, it's Chris. I'm the founder of Let's Talk Alberta. Let's Talk Alberta exists specifically to facilitate town halls and conversations for Albertans discussing issues that are important to Albertans. One of the ways we're doing this is we're putting up banners like this big, beautiful banner that's behind me featuring my friend Zane Novak. They're going up all over Alberta. And when people see these, the first thing they're going to see is a big text block that says Let's Talk. And I'm hoping that they say, hey, what is it that we have to talk about? And somebody will say, hey, we need to talk about these issues that are important to Albertans because we're going to be asked referendum questions on them this October. And if we're going to be asked questions of this that are this critically important, then it's important that we talk about it. And you can help us facilitate those conversations and encourage the conversation by sponsoring a banner just like this. You can do that at letstalkalberta.com by using the donate button to support it financially, or you can use the contact us to get in touch with us to arrange to get a banner to your location and put it up for people to see where you're at. And you can also send an e-transfer to letstalkalberta@gmail.com, and all of your support helps, and we appreciate it very much, and so do our fellow Albertans who are concerned about our future.
And things are really coming along
hey
right
everybody,
now.
It's Chris.
everything is kind of printed out, ready to go. So we're entering these final few months. These are absolutely crucial months. And we're going to have to really rely on local press, things like this. International press is now going to start diverging and converging on the American midterms and Donald Trump. There's over $1 billion going to be going into those midterms. So international press is going to be all over that. We really need to press on a local level. We need individual voices really matter at this point. Individual signs, billboards, things like that are going to matter as well. Keith Wilson's organization is also pushing back, making sure that he can get billboards up, and if they're taken down or they're vandalized, he's going to make sure that even more go up to replace them.
And number one, on that point of the vandalizing and taking the signs and the flags and the billboards, again, it's the crazy other side. If you can't get them on camera, please do so. You can always send it to us or to any other content creator to continue to spread the word about how the other side behaves and how they're attempting to use that to essentially tell you to stay because they're such good people. But I will also say to anybody that maybe you've spoken to, I know Stephen Jensen and Todd and a lot of other people are putting up flags and are putting up signs and everything. And people sometimes come up to them and say, well, I don't know if I can put it in my house or in my car or in my work. I don't know if I'm comfortable. That alone should spark a conversation on why is it that in a free country you don't feel safe enough, you don't feel encouraged enough to how others will behave to actually talk about your political opinion and your political stance.
Yeah, that definitely says something, and that should send yourself a message if you can't even put a banner or a yard sign up. That being said, it is understandable. A lot of people are scared to lose their jobs and other things, and that's why they donate money to different causes like Let's Talk Alberta or Keith Wilson's organization as well. So we really do appreciate everybody that stepped up in the ways that they are able to step up.
Exactly. And lastly, Farm Geek or Tanya Clement says October 19 isn't a vote to make Alberta independent. It's a vote on whether Alberta should begin the legal process toward a future binding referendum and negotiate from a position of greater strength. If you're happy with the status quo, vote option 1, which I'm pretty much sure most, not everybody isn't. If you want Alberta to have more leverage before the final decision is made, vote option 2. And I think we do have to continue to clarify that very specific point as well. So I'm glad that Tanya is doing so.
And again, I'll just add one other thing. There are, I think, 9 or 10 other questions on this. Let's read each question individually and vote with our hearts here, whether it's immigration or IDs for voting or whatever it may be. A lot of the issues are just on there as fluff, and they're not going to be really addressed because these are federal issues. Danielle Smith wants to make it look like she's doing something when she really has no power over a lot of these things. That being said, we don't want to make it a free-for-all for them to absolutely flood mass immigration into Alberta and use this referendum as that excuse, because that would make it even harder for us on the binding referendum.
And again, we already saw and just talked about with Derek right there, talking about what happened with the last referendum on equalization. Nothing really happened, but let's listen to Tanya.
Alberta, let's talk about option 2. I've been thinking a lot about the referendum question, and I honestly think many Albertans are misunderstanding what they're being asked to decide. People talk about October 19th as though we're voting on independence. We're not. Let's look at what the ballot actually says. Option 1, Alberta should remain a province of Canada. Option 2, the government of Alberta should commence the legal process required under the Canadian Constitution to hold a binding provincial referendum on whether or not Alberta should separate from Canada. That's an important distinction. This vote is non-binding. No matter which option wins, Alberta does not become independent the next day. So if that's true, what are we really voting on? I think we're voting on whether Alberta should continue negotiating with Ottawa from the same position we've occupied for decades, or whether we should negotiate with something we've rarely had before. Leverage. Let's be honest. If you believe Alberta has been treated...
And we'll continue to watch this, but what I want to say is we need to vote that we want independence on October 19th, because if we don't, Ottawa's not going to get that message. All these pipelines and all these goodies that they're throwing at Alberta, they're going to absolutely disappear, just like the airport is now disappearing in Toronto. We want to send Ottawa a message, even if you don't want independence. Now, I happen to be somebody that does want independence. That being said, all this is going to disappear. I think Mark Carney will follow through on some of these pipelines and other things if we can send Ottawa a message and stick to our guns.
Fairly. If you're happy with the way our energy industry has been regulated, if you think we've had adequate pipeline access, if you're comfortable with the pace of economic growth, investment leaving the province, and the federal policies that affect Alberta, then option 1 is the logical choice. because option 1 says the current relationship is working well enough to continue. But if you've ever found yourself frustrated that Alberta contributes so much yet often feels ignored, frustrated that projects of national economic importance become political footballs, frustrated that decisions affecting Alberta are frequently made by governments elected with very little support here, frustrated that Alberta seems to spend more time asking for permission than building its future.
And also frustrated with our sovereignty constantly being given away through these MOUs. These pipelines look like good deals to people that are not politically engaged, but as soon as you read into it, you realize Mark Carney is federalizing natural resources and taking the sovereignty away from Albertans. And just like the press conference today, it seems like Danielle Smith is all too happy to give sovereignty away at every single turn.
Yeah, essentially, okay, yeah, I guess if people don't read too much into it, it'll make them happy.
Then ask yourself this: why would we voluntarily weaken our own negotiating position? In every negotiation, leverage matters. Businesses understand that. Farmers understand that. Workers understand that. Governments understand that. In fact, we're watching other provincial premiers openly argue that Alberta's energy should be used as leverage in Canada's negotiations with the United States. Think about what they're admitting. They're acknowledging that Alberta possesses one of the most valuable strategic assets in North America. If Alberta's energy is powerful enough to strengthen Canada's negotiation position with Washington, why wouldn't it strengthen Alberta's negotiating position with Ottawa? That's why I struggle to understand why Premier Danielle Smith wouldn't encourage
they want to use Alberta as the leverage against the United States, and the United States has a whole lot more power than the Canadian government. That same leverage used against Canada itself is actually insurmountable and massive.
Which is why they're so scared.
Albertans to choose option 2. She spent years arguing that Alberta deserves a fairer deal within Confederation. She's fought against federal overreach. She's demanded more respect for Alberta's jurisdiction. If that's the case, why wouldn't she want the strongest possible mandate before entering negotiations? Option 2 doesn't close any doors. It opens one. It tells Ottawa that Albertans are serious. It says the status quo is no longer acceptable.
Okay, and we can leave it there. An absolutely fantastic video. And I will say one other thing here. If we really do want a better deal with Ottawa, we need to make sure that we send that message. Otherwise, Mark Carney is just going to pull the rug out from under us after October 19th. And everything that he's been throwing, whether it's the pipelines, even though I don't like the MOUs or other things, are just going to absolutely disappear.
Yes. But now let's go back into your comments before we head into Alberta politics. Glenn Gunn says, agreed. Her first 9 questions just went moot.
Yeah, but I will say this. We do need to answer every single question. Otherwise, they could be used against us. We could win the one question that we want to win and lose the other 9. And that's going to put us in a weak position going into the binding referendum. So let's make sure we take the entire ballot seriously here.
Philip says, just finished watching the French's video on Danielle's word salad. She needs to go regardless. Oh, sorry, it's just you. She needs to go regardless of what happens in October, and says also equalization ending is non-negotiable. Danielle just threw away any leverage she had in negotiations.
Yeah, I've been saying this from day one. People give me a ton of shit, especially behind the scenes. I get email after email saying I should not be calling out Danielle Smith. I'm telling you, if we do not have a leadership review on her after October 19th and take it seriously, we need to send her a message, whether we win or whether we don't. But we also need somebody that's capable to replace her, so we don't lead way too Nenshi coming into power there.
Mm-hmm. Philip also says, I would rather deal with the devil we know, Nenshi, versus the devil we don't, Danielle. One is far more dangerous than the other.
I would rather have Danielle Smith than Nenshi. That being said, Nenshi's just not going to put the binding referendum on there. Yes. And that's the thing. Danielle Smith, we can leverage it to make sure it gets on there, hopefully one way or another. That being said, what I think the devil is in the details with Danielle Smith, and I don't think it's a simple 6 or 12 month process after the non-binding referendum. It's going to take 2.5 to 3 years with Danielle Smith, and I think she'll be in Ottawa by the time this thing ends up happening. And this is the major reason we need to replace her. I would hope somebody like Keith Wilson. I just don't know if he's going to be willing to do that. Mm-hmm. He's the strongest candidate that I think Federalist conservatives as well as independent individuals would vote for.
And I will read the comments from this next troll before I put him on timeout or just fully don't allow him to comment anymore. But Home Noodler says anyone that believes in this stuff should go back to school and at least finish primary school. Believe us, we did. As Trump followers, you're all low IQ dimwits that are probably flat earthers as well. No, I believe the earth is round. And Home Noodler says, if you don't like Canada, get the F out. We already did. We already voted for our own independence, which is why we're streaming from Mexico. If you're new here, well, now you know. We already left about
hundreds
of years ago.
Hundreds of thousands of people are leaving every year from Canada, especially conservatives. And this is why the Conservative Party no longer has that critical mass of voters, I believe. In Alberta, you do, because you are the most conservative province within Canada. You still have that critical mass, and we are planning to leave. The difference is we're planning to take Alberta with us. And that begins on October 19th with sending Ottawa a message.
And you should give your head a shake if you haven't noticed that Canada is essentially emptying out of real Canadians and bringing in replacements that are not going to be as useful as actual.
Well, there's a fight going on in the Democratic Party in the United States between these DSA communists and more traditional liberals. And a lot of people are waking up to, they want their freedoms. They want freedom of speech and other things. But it seems like liberal Canadians are building a cage around not only themselves, but around everybody in the country by taking free speech, by ushering in censorship, by any number of other things, such as mass immigration and trying to delete Canada's original culture by tearing down statues, renaming streets. I mean, I can go on and on here. Canada is unrecognizable at this point.
I mean, you can either realize what's happening now or realize it once it's too late. It's up to you, honestly. But just to finish off, Home Noodler also says Nat and the guy are feeding off of the stupidity of people on this channel for views and money. No other reasons. They're the same as Trump, greedy Fs who only think of themselves. Yes, because from Mexico, we're trying to support Alberta's independence, even though in no way, shape, or form literally benefits us.
Yeah, we're
just doing it because we're fighting for freedom causes. From 4 years ago, since we started this channel, it was the purpose of this channel.
Yeah, I've been fighting for freedom causes a long time. There was a point I completely lost hope in Canada, so I stopped focusing on Canada. And I started focusing a lot more on American politics because at least that had influence, I think, on a global level. And then Alberta independence really started to emerge to the surface. And this was probably one of the most important freedom causes that we had ever touched, not just because it influences Alberta, but it literally sits out a roadmap for the citizens to take back control of these rogue governments, whether it's in Canada, Ireland, or other places around the world. It shows the citizens can do it. You no longer need a politician. This is a citizen-led grassroots initiative, and a lot of people don't seem to realize that.
A lot of people also don't know how to frame it or how to shape it because, again, it is citizen-led and there isn't a politician behind it. All the politicians within Canada, both conservative and the liberals, are against it, are fully against it. So
well, not just the conservatives and the liberals. You go down the line, the NDP, they are all putting their elbows up. And it's kind of funny that this Alberta independence is leading to the conservatives putting their elbows up and endorsing a lot of the same talking points the liberals have. I think it's only a matter of 6 to 12 months before we see maybe an ousting of Pierre Poilievre for a far weaker candidate. I may not like Poilievre because he's against Alberta independence, but I want the best for Canada once Alberta is gone, and you're not going to get much of a better leader than Pierre Poilievre.
So in about 3 years, let us know how the taxes and your life situation is going up there in Canada and how much happier you are. Home Noodler loudly says, if you think there's anything different than that, give your head a shake. Again, let me know in 3 years how it's going. Kusher977 says, did you see the Moose and the Loose last video where the guy was trying to argue if you make more money, you should have more votes? I haven't seen it, but...
Absolutely ridiculous. I will say something else. Now's the time to start reaching out to national conservative content creators that are independent minded. They might not support Alberta independence, but they're starting to talk about it finally. Yes. These mainstream channels that really color within between the lines are starting to talk about Alberta, and they're not going against Alberta. One prominent commentator, I would say, is called Bakes on Things. Not my favorite channel, but he's fairly good. He colors in between the lines, but he was talking about Alberta independence and he reported on it honestly, and that's all we can do. I left a comment, I left a like, and I highly recommend anybody else, if you see content creators outside of Alberta reporting on this issue fairly, give it a like, give it a watch, and give it a comment so they'll continue to make videos on this issue, because the federal government strategy is going to be censorship, censorship, censorship.
Speaking of giving likes, we always try to get to 100 likes during the stream. So if you haven't liked it yet, please do so. It's just clicking a button and it really does help us out too. And Kusher977 continues, that's the straight path of communism, putting the power in the hands of the elite while the little guy gets stepped on. And yet it is talked about by the elites as the solution to anybody that does want fairness, is to essentially give all your rights and liberties away to them.
Well, also, the National Conservative Party in Canada now is saying, wait 3 years and vote harder? Carney's got a majority government, vote harder. That might not fix things. You're still probably going to lose because that critical mass of individuals might not be in Canada anymore. We have a citizen-led grassroots initiative. The people want change and they want it now.
Mm-hmm. And Philip Vespa, thank you so much for defending us against the trolls, saying to Home Noodler, so you finally decided to come out of your safe space. Good, you are going to feel the might of our movement. And that is what they're actually scared of actually seeing that the citizens do have an option other than relying on daddy government 24/7, as many have been instructed to do by the propagandist mainstream media within Canada that does the favors of the federal government.
Well, I think we're lined up pretty good for the votes. I don't know if statistically we changed if we got more than 30% or not at this point, but we have two kinds of voters. The national or the Forever Canada individuals only have one kind of voter. People that are highly motivated to keep Alberta in Canada might be about 30%. We have 30% or more that are motivated for independence. But if that other 30% can vote by just not voting, and I think that is going to be the biggest voter block. I don't think people are motivated and want to go out to the polls to say, yeah, let's stay into Canada, because everybody can see that it's failing right now. And in 2 more months, it's only going to be failing on a more extreme level than it already is.
And real quick, before we head into Alberta Politics, Todd says, hey y'all, hello, and thank you so much for being here as well. And now let's get into Alberta Politics.
He doesn't discuss federal politics. He only concerns himself with Alberta's independence.
Let's start with this from Mark Nixon that says, quote, Jason Kenney soft launching his campaign to replace Pierre Poilievre. Would you vote for Jason Kenney? Trending Politics says former Alberta Premier Jason Kenney calls on Conservatives to scrap supply management.
Yeah, and this is just, I've been calling this for a long time. And people originally, when I started bringing up this idea, because I heard the rumors behind the scenes, people said, why are you even talking about Jason Kenney? Because there was rumors he's going to take a shot to oust Poilievre. It's him and Doug Ford both battling out behind the scenes to try to oust Pierre Poilievre and take that spot. Whichever one, if one of them ends up taking that spot, the other one's going to get behind them. I think once that happens, you're going to see a Danielle Smith try to oust one of them. I said it almost every episode recently, but now I think you're seeing a broader scope of media really starting to realize this. Jason Kenney's never going to get the vote inside of Alberta, even if National Canada still had that critical mass of Conservatives, which I'm not sure they do. They need Alberta's vote, and Jason Kenney can't get it. Doug Ford can't get it either.
And again, to Derek Fildebrand and everybody else that's wondering what happened with Danielle Smith, well, she started setting her sights on Ottawa and on a stronger path towards being able to attain more and more power, notoriety, etc., by being the head of the Conservative Party. Now that she sees that Pierre is...
Well, everybody that's trying to oust Poilievre are doing it off the back of Alberta independence and saying, I'm a good federalist.
Exactly. Speaking of the propagandist media, Vesper says CTV gaslighting. CTV saying that America will suffer as much damage as Canada. And Trump saying the deal is important for them, not for the U.S. Without the USMCA, America's total loss is 0.3% of the GDP. Canada is 1.9%. And Carney is in deep stuff, and he should never run.
Yeah, these are not equal countries. America could absolutely crush Canada if they wanted to. They actually want a deal. If they didn't want a deal, they would have already bowed out and gave their 6-month notice. They have that option right now. But everything coming out of them says they simply want to renegotiate the deal like they did with almost every other country around the world. Canada is the one with the elbows up, and their plan is to wait Trump out now. And they're hoping for a good result in the midterms, which will carry them into 2028. If that plan fails, Canada is going to be destined for a dark future. And even if that plan succeeds, I don't know if you can wait the next 2 years and just destroy your citizens in the process.
What's crazy is, we talked about it yesterday, we're already seeing that Mexico is taking over that good position that Canada used to have with the US.
President Trump was on Fox News earlier this morning, once again throwing cold water on updating the current North American Free Trade Agreement.
The deal is important for them. It's not important for us.
What do you make of his comments this morning? This, as our key minister, Dominic LeBlanc, is heading to D.C. for talks.
The U.S.-Canadian economy has been integrated for more than 60 years right now. And while it will certainly cause tremendous damage and harm to the Canadian economy, it will cause equally as much damage to the United States as well.
President Trump was on Fox
and
News.
And this is the issue here. It's going to cause equal damage to the American economy. No, it doesn't. It actually benefits the Americans in the long run. Yeah, they get a little bit of short-term hurt, but what happens is that business shuts down and it reopens in the United States to avoid the tariff. So long-term, there is a huge benefit for a little bit of short-term pain for the United States. Canada, on the other hand, loses on the short, medium, and on the long term.
And there they were also saying that, the minister is coming to Washington to start talks. Well, Mexico is already in the third round of talks and has come out.
Let me correct that real quick. No, actually, Mexico's in the third round of actual negotiations. Yes. Canada has only started to begin talks. They're not in any kind of official negotiation yet.
Yes, that's what I was trying to get at. And both, again, the Mexican delegation and the U.S. delegation have both come out to say, well, Canada hasn't shown up. It's not us that don't want to start or have any negotiations. It's them that are not showing to the table.
Yeah, I think Canada has about 6 months here. The United States is looking for individual deals with both Canada and Mexico. If Canada doesn't manage to hammer a deal out within the next 6 months, I think Mexico will. Mexico's already very close, and that's going to lead us into almost right after the midterms. And they're going to be able to lean hard on Mexico. Will they hollow out the Canadian economy and have lots of those businesses move primarily to the United States? But a lot of the lower manufacturing will just end up moving to Mexico.
And funnily enough, that is not something that the mainstream media or the elbows up people ever talk about or even show that's happening. Something that they also don't, they do show, but they don't show the actual motivations and reasons why. Marty Up North says apparently the Liberals' popularity is at a 7-year high because the Conservatives are all leaving or have already left, being 2 examples of them.
Yeah, and I know everybody says these are fake polls. I've been calling it right from the beginning, not just because we left, but because I look at the statistics and hundreds of thousands of Canadians are leaving every year. A lot of them are for economic reasons, but usually economic reasons aren't quite enough. It's economic and ideological, meaning it's primarily conservatives leaving. And it's not just conservatives leaving, you have a replacement population coming in that want to be good Canadians. You vote Liberal if you're a good Canadian. That's what the mainstream media indoctrinates them into. And that's how you get polling numbers like this. This great replacement theory is working out just how it was supposed to in Canada. A lot of other countries were able to resist it, and their populations were able to wake up before it was too late.
And again, more than 472,000 people have already left as of 2023 to now. And the numbers are just growing. Even in this first quarter, it's been the highest leaving of Canadians, the highest number of Canadians leaving since they started taking statistics, which is insane.
This is the big reason I'm pushing so hard for Alberta independence now, because we have that critical mass of individuals that can vote for freedom. I think we lost that critical mass of individuals in Canada. If they still had it, maybe I'd be a lot nicer on the Conservative Party of Canada. I don't think they have that critical mass anymore.
Speaking of those new examples of new Canadians, Mark Nixon says, trucking chaos. How does this type of thing continue to happen in Canada? Trucker carrying a dangerous load of liquid carbon dioxide reverses on a busy highway because he missed his exit. All he gets is a week's suspension. Let's see.
Truck driver is being called out. You're about to see why. After backing into oncoming traffic on a busy highway near Montreal. And so here's what happened. The truck missed the exit for the weigh station, and then it decides to pull over and start backing up. Several drivers can be seen swerving to avoid a collision. I just want to let this video play out here to show you what the truck driver actually does. You can see the highway is very busy. You can see those other trucks, some of them getting off. Other cars swerve to avoid him. The union that represents road controllers saying beyond this being so dangerous, the truck was also carrying refrigerated liquid carbon dioxide. The driver was issued a fine of about $1,600, and his license was taken away for a week, which perhaps is not a long time when you stop to think about it.
Yeah, and this is absolutely ridiculous. And when I was seeing the story today, I was actually wanting to go a little bit deeper. Seems to be like an orchestrated problem, not just in Canada, but the United States as well. There's a huge shortage of truckers in the EU, Mexico, and other Western countries. What's happening is we're bringing in immigrants, fast tracking them through the process so they don't really know how to drive. This is bringing up a ton of stories and accidents. On a weekly basis, we have some of these accidents coming out. Now, why are they doing this, or why are they fast tracking it and making the roads completely unsafe? Some of the technology they want to bring in is going to have a huge impact on the working class, and that's self-driving trucks. I think that's the next step. They want people to be asking for self-driving trucks because they don't want the truckers anymore. I want the truckers. I just want the truckers that we had that were going through the appropriate processes, not the immigrants that we're bringing in, fast tracking, that don't know how to drive. I think this is orchestrated, and they want to bring in self-driving trucks. A lot of people may not know, but one of the number one careers for the middle class is truck drivers.
And Yazinski, thank you so much for the $5 super chat, saying what is happening with Canada and the U.S. negotiations is terrible, but so good for Alberta waking up and rising in numbers for independence. And that is why it's also important to keep up with what's going on with federal Canada and the whole elbows up scheme that they're cooking up, and showing the reality of it and how it does impact regular Canadians, even though mainstream continues to say no, but the U.S. will be just as impacted. Be scared of the U.S. The U.S. is going to invade. Being able to take those talking points and actually show the reality and what's going on in the rest of the world too.
Well, I watch a lot of conservative Canadian politics on a national level, and the good litmus test that's happening right now, because you're seeing a divide within the Conservative Party. You're starting to get this elbows up conservatives that are literally taking Mark Carney's talking points, which I didn't think they were going to become elbows up conservatives. And then you're having conservatives that actually want freedom and want what's best from the country. And the litmus test for that are people that actually want a deal with the USMCA and don't have any hard feelings on Trump. The elbows up conservatives are starting to blame Trump. They're saying we need to protect our companies or our monopolies. Protecting Canadian monopolies does not help Canadians at all.
And Yvette DeVoe says, I wrote too long of a comment and can't recover any of it. Always happens to me all the time when I'm trying to chat people. Says, hi, you two. Hello. Says, I read the mean comment. Says, new countries pop up all the time. We have every right to try and develop Alberta into a new country. The Constitution was carefully drafted to protect politicians and their control. It needs to be opened and changed. They never will. Time to go.
Absolutely.
And let's also remember that for example, Charter of Rights and Freedoms that a lot of people are leaning on, and the human rights and everything, it is a fairly new document as well, 1983.
Canadian flag is the new flag. Like, Canada... God, it's time for independence. If you don't see it now, God rest your soul, because Alberta's not going to be in a good place if we don't get our independence now. This is a special opportunity. No other province in Canada has this opportunity like Alberta has. It's taken away all those hurdles that are standing in front of other provinces.
And again, has that critical mass of people that if this isn't workable, I wouldn't like it, but I wouldn't blame people for also leaving and being completely now disenfranchised and have no hope in Canada like we had when we were in Vancouver, BC. Justin GP, hello, and we got your email. Thank you so much for all the support. I will reply to it. You know I'm slow at it, but thank you so much. Justin GP also says, I'm late, but I'm still here. Thank you, and says, hi, Nat, Guy, and the girl, who maybe you might be able to hear barking in the background. The girl is our dog, and yes, she's called Girl because he's called Guy. Philip Vespa says to Yvette DeVoe, I keep telling everyone this. You will never get the conditions necessary to change the Constitution. Federal and provincial governments are controlled by different parties. And that too.
Well, I would say one thing. If they really feel like Alberta is going to leave at some point, they'll make a minor change to the Constitution, try to pitch it as this massive change. It's not going to happen. But the only way to even get to that stage is to send a message on October 19th. No matter what you want, if you want a better deal and you want more sovereignty and you want more freedom for Alberta, you vote on October 19th for independence. And then we go into the next stage. There is a ton of stages here. This doesn't not necessarily mean we get independence right away. So I urge people, even if they don't necessarily want independence, but they want a freer Alberta, a more prosperous Alberta, October 19th is a way to send that message.
Mm-hmm. Sean B says, where is Premier Smith and who is this imposter? And again, Premier Smith's intentions have completely now fallen towards being able to get more power within Ottawa.
Well, I finally feel vindicated. Everybody's starting to realize today, because I've been watching a lot of the comments on X, and I've been saying it for months. We need a leadership review on her directly after the non-binding referendum on October 19th. I would even go as far as to say, even if we lose, God forbid that we lose, we can take another run at this thing later on, but we're going to need a leadership review on Danielle Smith either which way. And Mitch Sylvester was an absolute genius on telling everybody to buy up UCP memberships, because now we're in a position where we actually hold the power on Danielle Smith's future. She's not ready for a leadership review. As much as her eyes are on Ottawa, that's a 1 to 2 year process for her.
Yvette DeVoe says, it could be so good. Why such a pushback? I don't get it. And Philip Vespa says, the Uniparty is here. When they kick Pierre out, I hope Mr. Bernier walks over to him and says, first time, a PPC party with Maxime Pierre would be excellent for the rest of Canada. It would be. I hope, it could shake Pierre maybe. Maxime could shake Pierre and make him realize all the mistakes of his ways and why he actually lost the control of his own party.
And Maxime Bernier is actually on Jason Levine's show tomorrow, so I highly recommend
7:30 a.m.
Yeah.
The Levine show. On that, let's go to Alberta Personalities. Then we'll continue reading your lovely comments. And while we go to that segment, please don't forget to hit that like button.
But they need to understand that Albertans are done. We're leaving, and there's no more conversation to be had. I know that's upsetting to people.
Let's start with one of our least favorite people. Saskatchewan writer girl, not her, but says freelancing, the U.S. is a bigger threat than China because she has business in China, so she can't actually say that the actual threat they are. Chrystia Freeland just told Wall Street Week that many Canadians now trust Beijing more than Washington. Now they've been told to trust it for a while now.
Christina Freeland is an extremely dangerous character. People think she's in Ukraine. This is where all the money is going. We are per capita the #1 country funneling money to Ukraine, as well as Ukraine could branch out into a much broader war, especially if the Ukrainian and Iranian conflicts are combined. And Ukraine is now conducting strikes on Iranian and Russian ships. It's not out of the realm of possibility to see this thing kind of branch out, and then her position is going to become even more prominent.
But let's also remember, as it says here, what she supported and the tactics she supported that were very similar to closer to China than the U.S. So let that sink in. This is the same Freeland who froze bank accounts during the Freedom Convoy, used the Emergencies Act on peaceful protests, and said she was quote-unquote protecting democracy. Now she wants us to believe China is a reliable friend. Well, her and her friend Trudeau wanted us to believe that a while ago, even as there was Chinese influence coming into our very own elections.
Well, and she wants to turn this thing into World War III like the rest of the EU. It's time to end these conflicts, whether it's Iran or whether it's Ukraine. Cut a freaking deal. If you got to give up the eastern half of the country, you're still going to have a country at this point. Krista Freeland's not going to let that happen because that would dry up the money laundering machine.
Round of tariff.
Canada is in a challenging position right now, David, because on the one hand, public sentiment is very, very angry. Canadians feel that they are a good, reliable neighbor, ally, and trading partner for the United States. It wasn't so long ago that we went through the drama of renegotiating our trade deal, and we got a deal with Donald Trump. And notwithstanding that, we keep on getting hit by wave after wave of punishment. First, the 232 tariffs. Now, this round of tariffs. And even when Canada has sort of tried appeasement, tried to get along, dropped the DST, it doesn't make any difference. In fact, the U.S. comes back for even more. So public opinion is very, very angry. In fact, something that I never thought I would see in my lifetime is that we are now seeing that more Canadians see the United States as a threat than China.
Okay,
Canadians
leave it there. And I'm going to say this. We need to wake up. If you're not paying attention to U.S. politics, what's happening with the Democratic Socialists of America, they're freaking communists. They're trying to bring the United States towards communism. Canada's freaking already there. The politicians can literally try to hard sell this shift away from America, away from freedom, away from free speech to the general public. And the general public eats it up hands over fist with their elbows in the air.
And if it is true what she says, that more than half of Canadians see the U.S. as a bigger threat than China, more than half of Canadians are retarded. Just like her. But next, speaking of retarded, Marcel says, quote, "Wow, liberal podcaster frames the U.S. consulate pew-pewing incident as Canada fighting back against tariffs. Canadians are reaching their breaking point and says are ready to push back, then blames the right-wing podcasters.
Yeah, the radicalization of Canada happened a long time ago. They're this comfortable to say this in public.
And again, we know exactly what the actual motives were and that it wasn't against pushing back against tariffs.
Canada has decided to retaliate against Trump's unjustified trade war. Today I'm going to explain the latest threats coming from the United States and how Canadians are pushing back. Trump has escalated by threatening even more tariffs. Today, Canada, we decided to fight back. An unknown person or group of people fired shots at the US consulate in downtown Toronto. I don't approve of violence or property destruction. However, this is an example of how Canadians, they're reaching their breaking point, and now they're ready to push back. The only people that are not angry at Trump right now in Canada are the people connected to Poilievre. Right-wing podcasters in this country, many of which attended Poilievre's leadership convention earlier this year, they've been oddly sympathetic to Trump. These right-wing idiots, they've chosen to double down. And this is why critics, including myself, have labeled these people traitors. Canada has decided to retaliate against Trump.
And this is ridiculous. Like, Poilievre has the same freaking strategy Carney does with Donald Trump. And I wish he would have taken the opposite policy and say, oh, we need to prevent Trump. We actually need to do what other countries did. I think that would have worked a lot better. We need to make a deal where we put everything on the table, not get salami sliced deal by deal. By the United States. And he took the same stance. And this is why you're starting to see elbows up conservatives.
And that's also why it's frustrating to deal with the retardation that's happening with people like him, where they don't even know how to properly place what's going on because they blame either the right wing or the podcasters or this and that, and they're not connecting that a lot of the conservatives have become completely disenfranchised with the Conservative Party itself because of the elbows up strategy, because Pierre Poilievre has been essentially a wet piece of toast and done nothing to actually try to win even, but say, oh, wait for me for 3 more years and I will make the change, and have left like us. They're not even there anymore.
Well, what I will say is the only people that want a different strategy from what Mark Carney has are the people within Alberta independence. And this is not to become the 51st state. As a matter of fact, we want to be our own free and independent country. We have a good economy and we have a culture to do so. But when it comes to the United States, what we envision for a free Alberta is a tariff-free trade with the United States. And a lot of people don't remember way back when. That's what Donald Trump offered Canada when he first started talking about this. He wanted to bust up the monopolies and go zero trade across the board for everything. Canada is the one that wants to protect its industries. They really just want to protect their monopolies.
But now let's go back into your comments. Alberta Personalities is always a shorter segment, and then we'll get into Alberta's Canada.
Oh, and I will say a lot of people kind of joined us later today. We do include a thank you at the beginning, right after the intro to all of our members. We put everybody's names up there, so thanks again.
Yes, thank you to all our members. Like Sean here, hello Sean, says, I prefer to call China its real name, illegal occupied territory of Western Taiwan. It's a bit longer, but I do prefer it a lot. And Sean also says Canada was designed to be against the USA. Its founding is the Laurentian elite who were exiled loyalist monarchists from America. And exactly, from the inception. And a lot of people don't remember that little fact either, that they were the ones that sided with the crown, with the control.
On multiple levels, because it's the Laurentian elites that were exiled, but also you're actually just an arm of the British government and the City of London. And a lot of people are waking up to all roads leading back to the City of London, and Canada is being used as a weaponized mechanism against the United States by them and by themselves.
John B. says the non-country of Canada won't exit soon. Pierre is a globalist.
Yeah, I completely agree with that now.
Essentially. And Philip Vespa says, I didn't know Timu JJ McCullough, which is even worse, was even a thing. Also a bit pudgier. Most unhinged streamer I've ever seen wanting to link the attack of the US consulate as retaliation against the tariffs. Well, and that just shows he wants to link it because he wants to make sure that people know, oh, that might be the appropriate response, and the appropriate response with our anger that we have towards the US to do things like that, even though one thing has nothing to do with the other one.
Well, and I mean, the way he's calling out Poilievre's literally getting his elbows up saying we need to have a hard-nosed strategy against the United States.
But now let's get into Alberta's Canada. We call it that way because Alberta is the only thing that's still holding up Canada, and Canada fully depends upon it as it does the US.
I'm angry. I've had enough of these people.
Let's start with, hold on. This from the food professor.
And I'm really glad we're not having any problems
Don't
today.
say it. We're going to start having issues.
Yesterday we had a slew of issues.
Technical
God.
issues.
And it takes me 3 or 4 hours to create a show. I was so pissed when everything started going wrong. I'm like, oh my God.
Actually, hold that thought. Thank you so much to Karen Whitelock for the $12 super
Oh,
chat,
thank you.
saying, I am late, not sure if you covered this. 11-year-old Parker, missing in Calgary 2 weeks ago, has been found in Colward. Rest in peace. Oh, that's sad to see. I kept seeing the announcements and the missing posters and indications, but I didn't know that there was a sad resolution.
Yeah, we'll kind of lead off the show and give her a little rest in peace in the beginning of tomorrow. I think that's absolutely horrible news.
Yes, but thank you for...
Yeah, I actually hadn't heard about it, so...
Yeah, I kept seeing it pop up on X and on news sites and everything, but I didn't know there was a resolution. That's very unfortunate to hear. But thank you for being here, Karen. And now let's go into this first thing. The food professor says Canada isn't attracting new grocers because the country is generating very little new wealth. Why would anyone invest here? The government's role is to create the conditions that encourage private investment. Prime Minister Carney understands this, which may explain why much of its own wealth is reportedly held outside. His own wealth is reportedly held outside of Canada. And let's also remember that this might lead, speaking of groceries, into the retarded idea, the communist idea, that Mamdani has already had in New York of government-run groceries, where we've seen them working so well in places like Venezuela and Cuba.
Well, this is going to lead to government-run grocery stores, and we already seen the NDP pitching this. The NDP's position within Canadian politics is to pitch these communist ideas and to kind of pitch them to the general public, where they'll steer radical and normalize these ideas. So then Mark Carney can take it and give a bit of a softer pitch, and then get government grocery stores and nationalization of federal resources and a lot of other things.
The NDP hard sells it, so the Liberals can then soft sell it and actually implement it. But let's watch the food professor say it.
It's like that, don't we, in Europe, which everybody loves.
Do you know why Aldi is not coming into the gay market?
Why is that?
Do you know why Lidl is not coming into the gay market? Because Canada is not attractive enough.
Yeah.
Why would you invest in Canada when the unemployment rate is rising, when people are severely in debt? Why would you invest in Canada when there's little or no disposable income? Why would you invest in Canada when over 10 million people are skipping meals? Where's the market potential?
I mean, that's such an indictment, isn't it, Canada? When you think of the countries that they do expand into, like the former
do you know what the irony is?
Soviet bloc countries.
Loblaw, the #1 grocer, is investing in the U.S., but nobody's coming here. And you're telling me it's about retail and competition? The role of the government is to enable conditions in order for investment to occur. We've seen the complete opposite. Our own Prime Minister, a banker, knows this because most of his money is not in Canada.
And I completely agree. And I will also say the grocery store's biggest competition is the food bank at this point. I mean,
Yes,
it
I was
is just
gonna mention
expanding, so much so now people are suggesting we need government-run grocery stores. Absolutely ridiculous. We need to be hardening up these grocery stores that we already have so they don't start fleeing the country. One way to do this, and although I'm against the way the U.S. government is implemented, is government food stamps. But if you could just spend it on the necessities such as meat, vegetables, and rice, I'm not necessarily against that.
Yes. And also, local production would be lovely. But in Alberta, I know there is still kind of a common thread of shopping local and going to the ranchers and etc. But it can't happen in the rest of Canada, and a lot of people aren't even used to that anymore. Let's go to BC and see what Premier Eeyore is doing today. Alexander Sultan says BC Premier EB appears triggered when asked about why one of his cabinet ministers broke rank.
And he's really trying to force the smile because he's got a snarl here and a smile here, and I think his face doesn't know what his mind's thinking.
I noticed you mentioned the Tilbury Fortis BC investment twice today, maybe 3 times. One of your ministers, Kelly Green, wrote quite a contrarian statement, put it out on Friday. And cabinet solidarity is not a thing that people talk about at the water cooler much, but we know what it means. Why were you comfortable with allowing one of your ministers to break what is a very old and long-standing tradition of cabinet solidarity?
Well, the reason why I've mentioned this investment a couple times is it is indicative of what's happening in this province. Now, if you solely were reliant on social media from the BC Conservatives for the information you received about British Columbia, you might believe that the culture war is the #1 issue in the province, and that reversing it would result in significant investment. The opposite is true. We're seeing significant investment in the province of British Columbia. This recent announcement of multi-billion-dollar investment in an area that the Conservatives said was uninvestable. They literally said that. And now it's seen a $2 billion investment. It's important to point out these contradictions because the work that we're doing as a province is delivering jobs and opportunity for British Columbians. What the Conservatives are proposing would undermine that work directly and would result in a loss of jobs and a loss of opportunity when you take your eye off the prize of delivering these projects, finding a path forward with First Nations, finding a path forward with community and regulators, protecting safety while developing the economy. That's when you're able to deliver multi-billion-dollar investments like we're doing.
He wants to take your private property and take your freedom and absolutely destroy it. He's trying to give away one of the biggest land grabs in Canada, the 30 by 30 program. It looks like British Columbia wants to go first with up to 11% of their land, and it's the most natural resource dense land within British Columbia. If this isn't the federalization of natural resources on steroids, I don't know what is. He's also going after private property as well. I really wish we would see the BC One party and Dallas Brody take him out, but we're going to have to rely on the Conservatives over there. And I'm very fearful the Conservatives have the same idea Mark Carney has, and that is the federalization of natural resources and putting the power in the federal government's hands. And when the Conservatives suggest something like this, I think the people are going to cheer it on, and I think that's extremely dangerous.
And again, what government likes to let go of the power granted even by another or the former government? So if the Conservatives ever get in and all of these things have already been put into place, well, they'll obviously continue it and make use of it instead of taking away the power that they themselves have. But speaking of power and retardation, Wealth Moose says, according to Immigration Minister Diab, international students are an important contributor to the Canadian economy. I will give a caveat right after, but let's watch her.
Recently, the students from some provinces, especially from Ontario and Alberta, they are protesting because they are getting mass rejections for the post-graduation work permits, and right now a protest is going on in Alberta. So what is government doing about it? Is it targeted something, and why it is happening?
So international students add value to our Canadian economy. There's no doubt about it. When I started in political life in 2013 as a provincial minister, we worked extremely hard to ensure that when international students came to our educational institutions, that they were welcomed, that they were looked after, and that they got a very good education.
Okay, you can leave it there. Well, let's read the super chat really quick from Anna.
Everybody read that one?
You did?
Yeah.
We just got it right now.
No.
Food bank?
Oh, now we did, yes. I'm sorry it wasn't showing up, and I was like, oh, we read that one. Thank you so much to Anya Zinski again for the $20 super chat, saying food banks also have a lot of waste. My brother gets called every week to come pick up expired or way too much donations that are spoiling. People are very picky on what they even get from the food bank, which is also insane for me.
Well, absolutely. And the food banks can't keep up. And I'm fine with minimizing the food banks and using it in a very strategic way. And it should be complemented with very targeted food stamps as well for meats, vegetables, and rices. Nothing else outside of that. No processed products.
And speaking of international students, we also know that a lot of people that are going to food banks are international students that don't really need the support from food banks, but use it and put it blast it all over social media saying, oh, come to the food banks because they give you free food, either not understanding or fully understanding that they're taking advantage of something that is designed to help those in most need, not the ones that are able to come to Canada, pay for an education, even if it's just 2 years, and then take advantage of services that are supposed to be for those most in need.
And the food bank used to work properly in Canada. When I was a little kid, my mother raised me as a single mother, so I would constantly have to go to the food bank. We had very little food, and the food bank was the only way for us to get food a lot of times. That was the only food in our cupboard, and it worked back then. It started to become a absolutely broken system. We need to start re-looking at it, and we need to fix it. And we need to fix not just the food banks, but why are people having to go to the food banks in absolute mass? And it's being abused by a lot of people now as well. And this is coming from somebody that had to use the food bank as a child.
And I think the abuse is also something that a lot of people don't want to look into because they don't want to be racist or xenophobic or this or that. But you have to. Otherwise, the people that actually need it, even those that are immigrants, refugees, etc., aren't able to get access to it because food banks are running out of food. They come out and say that. Or because people are picky, apparently, they have to go pick up food that is spoiling and can't actually go to those people that really do need it.
Yeah.
Insane. And Stephen Jensen also, thank you so much for the $5 super chat, saying watching from Basic Alberta at the LTA event, Let's Talk Alberta event, with Corey Morgan, Ben Trudeau, and John Real, and Chris Scott will be filming the event. Oh, great.
Oh, absolutely fantastic. And Stephen Jensen is a crucial part of the Alberta independence movement.
Yes, he is. Okay, thank you so much for those 2 super chats. And do you want to anything else on that?
No, we can go right into the next one because it was actually the 2 stories were kind of interlinked, and you knew more about this other one.
But just quickly on that last one, the Minister Diop saying international students are an important contributor to the Canadian economy. Some, I will say, are just because they're paying international student tuition. However, those are only the ones that are taking the 4+ year programs at actual Canadian universities and not the diploma mills that a lot of these protesting students, mostly from India, are coming and essentially just using food banks and requesting things that they shouldn't be actually allowed to get, like a post-graduation work permit. Ryan Gerdison says, I guess a hunger strike is over because, again, these students were in a hunger strike and then they were caught eating. All these individuals knew what they signed up for, but you can bet that they were told if they refuse to go, our bleeding heart government will allow them to stay, which is why they're protesting and think that they'll get away with it.
Okay, and that's good. And Mark Carney seems to want to use students, asylum seekers, and people with PR saying, oh, I've reduced all these numbers. Yeah, but refugees are exploding and asylum seekers are not not the same as refugees. I was looking into that earlier because Mark Carney was putting out comments like, oh, he's fixed the problem. He hasn't fixed the problem. He's exacerbating the problem. And he's opening up the doors even further at the end of 2027.
And again, by saying, oh, we're reducing immigration here, but actually opening further the door over here or allowing more numbers to come in this way, well then, what?
You can just go to you for a moment.
Okay. You're just me. Let's go back to reading your comments before we head into Alberta and the World, our last segment before we head into RUMBLE. Again, we simulcast over there. And the stories that are too spicy for YouTube, we usually cover on RUMBLE. Sean says, Canada was designed to be against the USA, but it's grown into a country wholly relying on the USA for its existence, as it rightly found the UK to be wholly unreliable in defending Canada's prosperity because the UK cannot even defend itself. And the UK has also continued its own managed decline, in part thanks to the banker Mark Carney, who is currently in charge of Canada. Sean says, but you still have so much of that founding Laurentian elite, anti-Americanism, and right now relies even on Poland to supply its forever Canada leader. It's kind of sad, really. It is, and again, the fact that Canadians and those with the elbows up and that have been taught to, essentially raised to hate on the US are just being ungrateful, and that is also sad. Sean says, dude wants investment as long as it's not investing in Prince Rupert or any transportation or pipelines to BC's best natural port. Again, EB, not the brightest bulb out there. Premier Eeyore. Yvette says, already too much government power. That's the problem. They control so many things. They cause PTSD and feed TDS, cap farm sales, force them to dump perfectly good food instead of giving it away. Could go on. And we've seen, we years ago, we showed that video of the dairy cartels having to dump a bunch of milk because the government told them so, to do so.
Yeah, because of quotas and things like that. But I'll also say, when we interviewed Bruce Party and limiting the amount of government power, I mean, it would be nice to completely eradicate government power, but at least looking into absolutely limited and building mechanisms of transparency is going to be crucial in a new and free Alberta, because Alberta has so much natural resource wealth. It's going to naturally lead to corruption. So we need to fight against corruption, transparency, and government power right from the beginning.
John B says the elites in Canada are from America. Good God. Well, they kind of both came over from the UK and then kind of split into those that wanted to not be ruled by a king and those that wanted to continue to be loyal to the monarchy. And they ended up in being the Laurentian elite that currently still runs Canada.
And I will say thank you to everybody that has given us a like. We try to get to 100 likes because if we can, the next day I notice the video really gets distributed by YouTube a lot more, and especially leading up to October 19th. We really want to try to shift hearts and minds here.
Thank you. John B. also says, we need to see the Republic of Alberta. Americans are hoping the best for Alberta. And again, there's a lot of similarities, more and more appreciation between Alberta and the U.S. than the rest of Canada as well.
Yeah, I mean, the United States wants what's best for Canada, even though Canada has constantly used it over the years like a lot of other countries did. And then Donald Trump got in there and said, no more. America has to rebuild itself. We've become too weak. But they let a lot of countries use them. But these countries are thankless in the end.
Especially Canada. John B. says the city of London controls Canada, and the guy loves that point, and also says Canada is almost communist, I would say, at least heavily socialist at this point. Prime Minister Mark Clowney is a megalomaniac.
Oh, and I will say, if anybody is interested in American politics, there's a great channel called...
Well, we're going to start a new live stream, I think once a week on American politics as well, but...
Ace American Fire. And he is somewhat connected, or at least with the thought stream of the Promethean Action Group. Absolutely fantastic. I've been watching him on a daily basis lately.
But again, Nat and the guy will also start covering U.S. politics once a week. The rest will be Alberta independence. James Hunt says this is about the self-driving truck part. Do self-driving trucks do self-walk-around checks? Will these truck tires not fly off like a dumb driver and other problems?
Well, and then who does the shit roll downhill on? It's going to be the company, but nobody goes to jail. They'll get a fine. The company is just going to build that into the model. I prefer to have a driver. I want somebody to pay the consequences if mistakes are made.
John B. says, that is sad. Provinces need to get out of the drag of Mark Clowney. God, the problem is all the people that would be incentivized to actually do something about it have probably already left, and I count us as an example.
Well, not everybody, especially not in Alberta, because there is hope because of the independence movement. So,
John B. says, totally dislike Premier Eby. My God, that dude is a tall tyrant of BC. The tall Eeyore of BC.
Yeah, his day's coming, but it's obvious he's going to be replaced by a conservative at this point. I do warn that conservative that does replace him I think is going to go for the federalization of natural resources, and they're going to really start pushing this with Western provinces, and they're going to push it as a good thing, but they're going to take the sovereignty and the economic sovereignty away from the people of these provinces and the provinces themselves. It's dangerous when the conservatives get in if they do start pushing federalization of natural resources along with Mark Carney, because people will cheer it on.
John B. also says that land grab is communism. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And hold on.
And let's just remember, these land grabs are coming in through the UN, through the DRIPA laws, through the First Nations, but they're also coming in on a federal level with the 30 by 30 program. And a lot of people are forgetting about that other side.
John B. says, I don't get it. Why does EB not want investment in pipelines or transportation? I'm sure the U.S. and Canada could make a freeway from Alaska down to Washington State with the BC involved in investment too.
Even more than that, why does Mark Carney not want the investment? He claims he wants the investment. He denied $70 billion of investment from Middle Eastern countries because there's no natural resource projects, but there is. He just wants to keep everybody out of it, so the only investor is the federal government. So it's the federalization or the communism of natural resources there. That's number one. But there's also another $250 billion jackpot of investments, I guess you could call it, from the United States. Now it's at $249 billion. $1 billion has been invested in Africa for mining. Most of that $249 billion from the United States is looking to go into mining. They would prefer that to go into Canada. Canada needs to start putting all this on the table when it comes to the USMCA.
Filipespa says international students add profits to universities responsible for propaganda. They are a net drain on the general economy. Yes, in that, I do fully agree with that, though.
Well, and this is how you really get a strong new voter replacement block. You bring them into indoctrination centers, being the universities, indoctrinate them, and then make them citizens. You guarantee yourself a new liberal voter as you get rid of one conservative voter that are fleeing the country.
Now speaking of fleeing the country, let's go to Alberta and the world, and then we'll head into, we'll continue reading in the rest of your lovely comments, and then we'll go into RUMBLE.
Okay, so let's go into the first section here.
Oh, okay. Because I'd let you this one out. Rand Paul
Well,
said...
and I will say, when we went to RUMBLE yesterday, the Fauci diaries came out. There's a lot of explosive news coming out yesterday as well as today. I highly recommend kind of watching this section so you know what's going on. Fauci's refusing to answer questions. He has immunity. I don't know if he has the right to refuse questions or take the Fifth Amendment when you do have immunity. It contradicts one another.
Plead the Fifth. Rand Paul says Anthony Fauci's attorney couldn't follow basic instructions and disrupted a serious hearing. I had no problem having him removed.
But the attorneys are not recognized. In fact, the attorney was told not to sit at the table, and he's not obeying that recommendation. There's a row behind you, sir. That's where you were told to sit, and you're not. And now you're disrupting the proceedings. And so, look, this is the way Anthony Fauci wants to be remembered, for a lawyer not listening to the rules. That's the way you want to be remembered, and that's what you're going to do. You are not recognized, sir. Security, please remove him from the room. Let the record state that Dr. Fauci will still have the advice of the other half a dozen attorneys that he brought along today.
And we're going to keep going through this. There's a series of stories to kind of show what happened in court today. And I think a lot of people want answers. If Fauci has immunity, answer the freaking questions so the public can have the answers. You already got the immunity. I would want to see you go to jail, but you already got it. So let's at least get the truth to the general public here.
That continues to be too difficult. Because Sam Cooper says, quote, Fauci invokes the Fifth Amendment before a Senate committee, accusing Rand Paul of convening the hearing only to put him, quote unquote, behind bars.
Yeah, and he doesn't want...
And to get answers, too.
Let's keep going here.
Oh, sorry. Next, Tim... I almost called him Timmy Pool. Tim Pool says, quote, Congress, Fauci saying that he can't plead the Fifth because he already has a pardon. And again, it seems like he's trying to squirm away as much as he can, but...
And again, a lot of people may not know the Fauci diaries have come out. Explosive news over the last 3 days. Fauci was publicly jibby-jabbed, and then he was vaccine injured as well. Just a few months after that came out from those diaries. He also was advised that it did come from a lab in Wuhan, actually knew that, and then told the general public something different. There is a number of other explosive things that came out over the last few days. It's all culminating in Fauci kind of taking the stand and refusing to answer, even though he has immunity.
Constitution. The chairman has denied your assertion of privilege and directed you to answer, but you nonetheless refuse and stand on privilege despite the existence of the pardon. The committee will have to consider after this hearing what appropriate action should be taken against you for the failure to testify after being directed to do so. It's against the law to obstruct an investigation of Congress. There will be repercussions to your refusal to testify today. Senator Peters.
He's got a pardon. He's immune. He can't invoke the Fifth. This is wild. It's because lying to Congress.
You're not recognized. If you are unruly, you will be removed from the proceeding. You are not recognized, and you are not recognized, sir. Sir, you are not recognized. You are not recognized. Security. We'll hold off. But you will respect these proceedings. You were told not to sit at the table. You insist on sitting at the table, and we told you would not be recognized. You are not invited here for testimony, sir. You are being disruptive. Would you behave this way in a courtroom? No, because the judge would put you in jail. I can't do that today, but I can have you escorted from the premises. So I would say, sir, sit quietly and don't say another word. I said, sit quietly. You are not recognized. Another word and you're gone.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to hear what the attorney has to say.
He is not recognized by the committee or the chair. If he speaks again, he will be removed from the room.
Yeah, and it was really day after day of explosive news coming out, and COVID is really getting back in the headlines. And let us not forget what happened there. This led to a lot of different things, including the Freedom Convoy, which was the origin of this channel and how we started. That was the beginning of the end for us staying in Canada. Yes. They had crossed every red line at that point.
Well, it showed us how many red lines they were willing and did actually cross, and then how the people and the public itself, at least within Vancouver, BC and British Columbia, reacted to it by essentially applauding the government, both provincial and federal, and by doing the job of also censoring and also trying to control the rest of the population that was more free thinking.
Well, a lot of countries are still trying to stick to the line, buying billions of dollars of jibby jabs to this day. And Canada happens to be one of them. And they're trying to censor a lot of this information from coming out. I think these trials can be extremely helpful to Alberta independence, just to remind people of what the Canadian government did at that time and how tyrannical they were, invoking the Emergencies Act as well as a number of other things.
But also, as former British Columbians, let's not forget about this lady either, which is what I was trying to get into. Chris Erickson says Dr. Bonnie Henry belongs in prison behind bars. Yes.
They do not affect fertility. There's no way that they can do that. But that is one of the common lies that is out there right now. There is no increased risk of complications after being immunized to you or to your baby. There are no differences in miscarriage, preterm births, stillbirths, or a birth defect. They do not affect.
Okay,
and yes, there was. Yes, there was.
And all this information is out there now, and people don't realize all these side effects and everything they said back then. That's why we're playing the clips of her, these Fauci diaries. There's explosive information in there, as well as the studies that are coming out now under RFK. They're being submitted by the head of HHS, which is RFK, and now people are being able to use them in court cases around the world. The problem with Canada is they blocked a lot of those court cases from even happening.
And that's great, but again, those are adverse reactions that she's talking about that were shown on screen specifically for pregnant or people or women looking to have babies soon, was all within the little booklet that comes inside the jibby jab itself. So we did know about this. Women were just not being told about it before they got it.
Oh,
you have
to realize and remember what happened when the jibby jabs first come out. There was no insert in them in the beginning. They came in later on.
Yes. But now back to your comments before we head into RUMBLE. Yvette DeVos says, who is Fauci protecting? I mean, that too, because he has immunity. Who doesn't?
Absolutely. And this went on with the Chinese Communist Party as well. And we have to remember there's 57 phase 3 biolabs on the border of Ukraine and Russia, all in Ukraine. What the hell were they doing there? They're not even a part of NATO or the European Union. This is highly suspicious.
Lots of things are currently highly suspicious as well, but Sean says all he has to do is tell the truth. He can't go to jail as long as he tells the truth or says he doesn't recall. The Fifth Amendment is based on some crazy theory that states might try him separately. And yet he has a pardon, and Sean continues, I wish Fauci was going down, but unfortunately he has that pardon by Biden to protect him. A senile Biden that's signed with an auto pen, but still apparently counts.
Yeah, I don't know. Trump made a statement on this today as well, and I just don't know if he's going to be able. I don't know if there's grounds to go after these auto pen signatures, even though they're supposed to be accompanied by a letter saying that authorization was given, and supposedly those letters aren't there. So,
John B says, I've been saying this. Canada will soon ask for food from the United States, and we will give it. Clowny is starving Canadians. I fully agree. And John B says that is unreal. Americans would be angry, and I'm sure Canadians are getting pissed off about that too. Philip Vespa says these videos make me so angry. Kick these people out now.
Well, and usually we talk about stuff like that on RUMBLE, but right now this is making headline news. People can talk about this on YouTube again, which is a good thing. So
I will say. John B says to Philip, being an American, they piss me off too. Kusher says Carney is running immigration exactly the same as his green agenda. He backdoors it and then describes how he backdoors it in the past.
Yeah, he's got 4 different buckets. Actually, he's got more than 4 different buckets, but he's got 4 major buckets. He empties a little bit out of 3 and then overfills the 4th one. And then he starts to dump some out of the 4th one and then starts increasing the volume in the other 3. And he brags about how he's stopping mass immigration. No, he's not. He's doing a shell trick to the Canadian public. And the mainstream media is propagating that like he's actually slowing immigration down. He's not. He's looking to pick it up.
John B. says Fauci is worried. Yes, he is. Philip Espa says this is true 4D chess. Trump knew exactly what he was doing. Fauci is going down. But can he, though?
I really hope. I mean, if I had one person that could be convicted, it would be Fauci, even more than Biden, because Biden's brain damaged. But
John B. says Congress was trying to have Fauci speak out of tune. Fauci was nervous as hell. Philip Espa says this also has the potential to...
I will say this. Everybody's waking up to Fauci, especially with these diaries. Explosive stuff are coming out, but the Democrats are holding the line saying Fauci did nothing wrong. They're parroting the talking points, and it does not look good for them, especially going into the midterms. This is a huge line of attack for Republicans coming into the midterms.
And Philip actually mentions that. Says this also has the potential to swing the midterms if justice can be delivered for people affected by the Fauci's evil agenda.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We'll see. Del Robinson says, what has happened to Premier Smith? She is now for new equalization payments. We need all of you at the general meeting this fall to get rid of this turncoat.
Absolutely. And I've been saying, let's get rid of Danielle Smith for a long time. And I said we had to wait to after October 19th and the non-binding referendum. And that would be the time that we can call for a leadership review at that time. And we need to, and we have to have people ready to do so.
Mm-hmm. And Sean says, sorry, not super talkative. That's okay. He says, haven't been feeling good the last day, so have a good rest of the show. Please take care of yourself. Drink water. That always kind of helps.
Yeah, Nat was sick all last week, and then I got sick just one day this week, so I was happy I shrugged it off with one day.
John B. says, Premier Smith lost her spark. And Philip Vespa says, make sure Mitch and Jeff secure tickets. Being there to vote her out is more important than just the membership itself.
Yeah, and this is the thing, and I've been saying this, how big's the venue going to be? How many tickets are going to be? How many tickets are made to the general public? Can we buy those tickets en masse, or are they going to give them away to Federalist supporters and really try to box us out? I'm sure they got game plans for this, because we're not the only ones talking about let's have a leadership review on Danielle Smith now. There are a lot of people talking about it now.
Now we're heading over to RUMBLE. Before we do so, please don't forget to subscribe. And also, if you're already subscribed, hit that like button because it really does help us out a lot as well. Also, thank you so much to everybody that super chatted and that also shared their opinions and their comments with us. It always makes the live show actually worth it being live. Now we're heading over to RUMBLE. There is no thumbnail on RUMBLE, just so you know. Oh, and Primors007 says, guy-friendly advice from an older gentleman who made many mistakes. Try not to interrupt Nat mid-sentence. I can feel the eye rolls all the way from Canada. Sorry about those eye rolls, but sometimes they're necessary. At least y'all see them. He doesn't get to see them. He's been told over and over again not to interrupt me, and yet he continues to do so.
I'm sorry, my love.
I try not to interrupt him as well. I used to interrupt him a lot.
I used to interrupt a lot more, though, as well.
Yeah, I used to interrupt him more, but...
my bad. I'll try my best.
Yeah, I know. I'm sure you will.
I know it's a problem.
Again, thank you so much for Primors007, and we're heading over to RUMBLE. We'll see you there.